Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show as we continue our education series. If you've been listening along, we've talked about tax credits, we've talked about deductions, we've talked about the beginning process of student loans and the difference between federal loans and private loans. And in our last session, we talked about, a real long discussion about federal loans. Now we're going to talk about student loans. So let's jump right into it. A student loan that is private is a loan that is not a federal loan used for education-related expenses. It may be recommended for individuals that have already exhausted other forms of free and federal financial aid. Now, so like I've said before, you want to go the federal approach first. But if you find that the federal approach isn't working because maybe you don't qualify for it, or maybe there's some reason that you need more money, then this may be a way to go. These loans are typically based on a strong credit history and verifiable proof of income or employment history. So just by saying that, these are not going to be the private loans that you're going to get if you're going to be going to college full time, because you're not going to qualify for them. Maybe if you're going to one of these trade schools or something, you may qualify them. So if you've asked yourself, how do I get a private student loan? This is what we're going to talk about today. Now, there are better private student loans than others. So the best private student loans are those that, number one, offer low fees. Now, what am I talking about here? There are student loan origination fees. Some of these private student loans will charge you a fee for getting a loan. It's just like getting a mortgage. There's an origination fee. So you want to look for ones that offer low or no fees. You want to look for ones that provide competitive interest rates. As we talked about before, the interest rates on these can be variable, and they will be based on your credit, be based on your eligibility to repay. Now, so you want to look for competitive interest rates. Shop around for these. Now, you also want to look for ones that supplement your other financial aid to meet the total cost of your education. So that's the whole point of these. These are supplements. These are not meant to be your first thing to do. They help you pay for undergraduate, graduate school, and professional degrees, as well as career training. Now, one of the things I have noticed, you'll see a lot of these in some of the trade schools. For example, and I don't even know if these are around anymore, but I remember as a young person, you would see these the Penco Tech and things like that on the TV during the day. I'd take a sick day from school and watch the Gilligan's Island or the Hogan's Heroes or one of those McHale's Navy shows, and in between those, you'd have your Penco Tech and your truck driving schools, and there's a legitimate career options, and that's where you see a lot of these private student loans. They also aid in building your credit, especially with a credit-worthy cosigner. And we talked about that a little bit. For these private loans, you may end up having to get a cosigner. You also want to check at the front end of this. Is there a way for your cosigner to be released? Are there, ways that you can demonstrate, once you go into repayment, that your cosigner can be dropped and you can just take responsibility for this yourself, because your cosigner might not want to be on this for a 10 or 15 year repayment. You also want to look to see if there are any flexible repayment options. We talked about this on the federal side. There are forbearance programs. There's ways to, extend the loan out if you have a problem with being able to pay, or you can reduce the monthly payments if your income drops. So you want to take a real strong look at these things and, look into them. Now, here are some popular ones that are available that you may have seen here. And there's Sallie Mae Smart Option Student Loans. There's the PNC Bank's PNC Solution Loan, SunTrust Bank's Custom Choice Loan, Wells Fargo's MedCap Alternative Loan, Wells Fargo's MedCap Extra Loan. Undergraduate loans typically used for those seeking bachelor's or associate's degree, and graduate loans for graduate students, obviously. Now, there is a website out there. It's called privatestudentloans.com. Now, I think this is a good resource. I'm not going to say that I endorse this wholeheartedly, but I think this is something you might want to look at, especially if you're looking at going into graduate school to be a lawyer. There's law loans, there's bar exam loans, or MBA loans for people pursuing MBAs. There are health professions loans used by graduate students of all the different types of, medical, like dentistry, nursing, optometry, pharmacy, veterinary medicine, and other health professionals. There's also residency loans. These are the loans that you might take out when you're doing a medical residence. And there's also student loans for parents as an alternative to the federal Direct Plus loans. Now, this particular website, like I talked about, privatestudentloans.com, they give you a great deal of information about what they do, and they can talk to you about some of the things that you should be looking at. And they have a discussion here, the basics of when you should apply for student loans that are private. And I think this is your good things. It should be noted that there are several number of considerations going into deciding how to finance a college education. As we understand it, choosing to borrow money for college can be stressful and involves a lot of thought and deliberation. Here are some things to consider, and I think these are very good things. The starting point to qualify for any financial aid is always the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. We talked a little bit about that in the last session. Pay attention to the priority filing deadlines in your state or at your college, because aid is awarded on a first-come, first-served basis. You need to stay on top of this. Don't leave this for your children to do. They will not do it. They will not be timely about it because they're not the one paying for it. They don't care. It might sound harsh, but it's true. Now, review your options to pay for college, including personal savings like a 529 plan. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Gift aid, grants and scholarships that don't have to be repaid. Tuition payment plans through your school. Some of the schools offer tuition payment plans where you can pay monthly or you can pay quarterly. So you may not need to get a loan. And then income from employment. Some employers, will offer some sort of educational assistance, or, maybe you're one of those students that you're going to work during school and you're going to pay for it as you go. Student loans should be considered for your last resort. Now, a lot of people don't think that that's the case, but it really is true. This is a loan. This is something you're going to pay for. I have so many clients that are paying student loans in perpetuity. Now, if you still need additional assistance, consider your loan options by comparing your federal student loan and private student loan options according to, and these are the big things you want to look at: loan terms and conditions. What are the loan terms and conditions? What are the fees? You want to discuss with anybody you're going to do these loans with, are there ways to accelerate payments? Are there ways to make small fixed payments which cover your interest or some of the principal balance? You want to understand the repayment options. Is there an option to defer repayment until you're out of school? It depends on the type of loan. Deferred repayment option means your loan balance at the start of your repayment will be higher than what you originally borrowed due to the interest capitalization. So bottom line is the interest is going to accrue as you get started. So you want to try to pay that as you go. One of the final thoughts they talk about here is get a good understanding of interest rates as well as the loan's other terms and conditions. Now, if you're not a loan expert, you need to understand the difference between variable and fixed rates. Fixed rates are fixed. It's pretty obvious. Variable rates vary. Now, keep in mind that the rates advertised may not necessarily be the rates you qualify for based on your creditworthiness or that of a qualifying cosigner. So because we're talking about these private student loans, you need to understand that this is something you need to pay attention to, because you may have qualifications that you weren't considering. You might do some analysis and say, okay, that's great, I can get this private student loan, and they're going to do it, and here's what it's based on. But then once they look at your credit, you might not qualify for that. So you got to circle back and make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into, and understand the repayment options and repayment and all those type of things. And we'll continue along this with our next session.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Sazio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Sazio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.